Welcome to the Vine Resources Podcast Show with your host, David Lawrence.
Welcome to another edition of the Vine Resources Podcast Show. I'm delighted today to be in the offices of ClearBank. I'm here with the CEO, Charles McManus. Charles, thank you so much for inviting us.
Absolute pleasure. Nice to see you here at ClearBank.
And it's a beautiful office building in Devonshire Square in central London, in the city. Charles, I wonder if I can start, if it's okay, with just sharing with our listeners a little bit about yourself and a little bit about ClearBank, if that's okay.
Absolutely. So, as you rightly said, Charles McManus, I have the pleasure of being Group CEO of ClearBank, which has been an amazing roller coaster. So, as you'll see from the headline in relation to ClearBank, first new clearing bank in 250 years. When we first coined that, everyone thought, oh, it can't possibly be true. And we went back to all the record books, essentially, of a new bank that essentially are connected to all the payment schemes in the UK. So be it faster payments, BACS, CHAPS, the Bank of England, all at one time, and actually bring it up in one API connected to all the payment schemes. So that was really Nick Ogden's idea, who founded WorldPay and Cashflow's a serial entrepreneur in relation to payment schemes. He was the one that came up with the idea. I got involved with Nick and we took it on, and essentially from there in 2014, essentially we've now got from 12 people, we've now got 263 in this building, and we've got a thriving business with a number of clients to be on board, waiting to be onboarded, and we're setting up in Europe. We'll talk about further developments in relation to the business. I've been in investment banking and wealth management 33 years, originally trained at KPMG as a chartered accountant. In fact, I'd just come back from Ireland helping Stephen Hester write off 10 billion, part of the 46 billion RBS bailout. Had semi-retired, looking forward to spending a little bit more time with the family as everyone speaks. Then met Nick and the world changed again. And here I am now on a ride, an amazing ride in building ClearBank, and hopefully in the next few years, essentially really putting ClearBank on the map on a global payments basis. So, no, I think I've put off retirement for a few more years because the proposition, the team, and what we're doing and changing the landscape is so exciting that I didn't want to let the opportunity go, and so I'm giving it everything I've got as well as the team while I. CEO, and we'll hand over, I'm sure, to someone even better than I am to take it on to strength to strength.
Now, I know there hasn't been a huge change in the industry before your company came on board in terms of the traditional options for companies to go to the likes of the big traditional banks. What would be the type of customer that may be coming to you now, or someone who's thinking of their payment options, some of the newer fintechs? Why would they be coming to you and having a conversation?
It's a really great question. And in fact, if you go back a few years in the UK market, there used to be 16 clearing banks. And again, back in 2014, when Nick was looking at the landscape, effectively there were only 4.
Right.
I mean, that's really quite a surprise. And actually, no one designed that. It happened through market consolidation. So a number of your listeners will recognise that Midland, for example, went into HSBC. NatWest was actually consumed as part of RBS. And through all that market consolidation, essentially, you got down to 4 clearing banks. And there's been a number of competition and market authority reviews of looking at oligopoly and monopoly within the big 4. The Cruikshank report is a really good example of that. And essentially, it couldn't prove that there was price fixing in relation to consumers. But at the end of every single CMA report, there should be new entrants to this marketplace, and actually none arrive. And so ClearBank essentially was the 5th in relation to changing that. You rightly were asking who really are our customers. The short answer to that is if you're a regulated financial institution, so you're an e-money license holder, an authorised payment institution, a credit union, a building society, a bank, essentially you need to clear your sterling payments through the UK marketplace on a daily basis. And essentially, you can go to the Big Four and you can go through their legacy IT and their service in relation to BACS and CHAPS and faster payments, or you can essentially come to our ISO 20022 API. You get your payments to our API, and essentially we do the rest through Microsoft Azure and real-time payments and all that latest tech, which try to give you the experience as if you were a direct member of those payment schemes. So rather than spending a year or 10 million becoming a member of faster payments, through our API, you go through the certification process, so then within 6 weeks, essentially, you can actually connect the API, file your payments through our platform, and then we give you the experience to tell you exactly where your payment is in the clearing system. And so that's a very, very different experience to what you get, which almost would say faster payments is like a batch process on the Big Four. You have no idea when your payment settles. You can see within our platform in the 3 cycles of faster payments every day exactly when your payment clears. And so for intraday liquidity management, managing cash flow, and payment finality, which is really important on the basis you click your button and do a faster payment. That doesn't mean it's settled. Whereas actually with our platform, you know when it's settled and it's done.
Yeah,
and
that's fantastic.
A big difference.
Yeah, and peace of mind for many
Absolutely.
operations and senior management.
And so for a lot of our regulated financial institutions are developing their front-end customer proposition. Most CEOs of those businesses, they just want payments as a utility. And essentially the COOs don't want big operations reconciliations and lost payments and customers up. They just want it done. And essentially then they can focus on developing their front end. And essentially the operational excellence is what we're trying to deliver, almost like a utility to actually take all that pain and operational and cost and friction out of the whole process. And in that way, essentially, allow those businesses, particularly the new fintechs, to actually develop their propositions. And we can do more in relation to enhancement of the number of faster payments, or how you want a direct debit, or can you do this, that, or the other, because actually I want to encompass that in a front-end customer proposition. Well, actually, unlike the Big Four, our tech stack allows us to do that. And so this is not just a cost-saving efficiency, it's a value add and actually enhancing customer products. So if you take the SME space, for example, of what we've done with Tide, we really believe that 1 + 1 = 3 to a small SME of having the best front-end application, but then a FSCS protected bank account with your funds sitting there of some of the best payments functionality in the market, and you put those two together, can that help you grow your business faster? So it's really a very exciting time. And in competition, of course, we've got competition. We thought we'd have about 18 months, 2 years before the next ClearBank was up and running. There are competitors playing in various different space, but there's no one quite that's built an IT stack specifically just to be a payments bank.
Well, and it was very clever on the name as well, and I'm surprised no one had that name. Maybe there's a story around the domain, I don't know.
There is, it's very interesting. I'll give you, Nick and I have an interesting joke about this, because we did keep it all confidential for a number of years, and it was remarkable as to how actually it didn't really get out into the marketplace. And when we registered the name, in fact, it was a US paper that actually picked up the name. And went after Nick and I in relation to ClearBank Limited, etc., etc. We made no comment and put them off. And then we had our launch day, and of course we came out with ClearBank. And Nick and I knew that essentially those original journalists that went into their editor that had the name ClearBank, that actually there was a clue in the name, but they didn't work it out until the day we launched. So it was really quite interesting. But I mean, we very much, the word transparency, like strategy, has become overused, but our whole perspective of trying to give back transparency in charging and service levels and the way everyone in ClearBank operates in terms of honesty and integrity, excuse me, and openness, tell it the way it is. The name is really helpful on the basis of teaching everyone how to behave. Just be clear with our customers.
Yeah.
And it's obviously a clearing bank. It's worked really well, and I love the simplicity of it really, because it does reflect exactly what we do.
And on a final note there, I'm sure it's much easier coming in as a new organisation, working in an agile way of working, using that new technology, the legacy platforms of the older banks that perhaps still bog them down. So you hopefully have an advantage in that as well.
Well, it's funny because we have two billionaire investors, John Risley and Peter Kellner. And John said to me right from the start, he said, well, you've got amazing technology and we've built a fantastic relationship with Microsoft. And Scott Guthrie, for example, the head of Microsoft Azure, was here last week with an entourage who reports directly to Satya. And for our size and the rest, punching way above our weight in terms of that relationship. But whether it's the relationship with sort of Microsoft or the relationship we've built with the customers, John has sort of said to me, well, hopefully you've got some decent shareholders who've got a pretty penny that can actually help pay the bills. You've got a fantastic technology in relation to actually build this platform on. Hopefully we've got some great people and work quite hard in building very able and capable people who are the most important asset, and I know we'll go on to talk about that in the company apart from the IT. And you've got a few customers that might actually like your product. So, Charles, could you just get on with it and execute, right? A CEO's job is all about getting it done. And you've got all of those in play. A lot of new businesses have to go out and really sell their product. We've been really fortunate from the point of view of a lot of people who've come to us as inward inquiry, rather than us proactively going out or doing any cold calling and the rest, and we're very privileged to be in that position. But it's an honour really to be a CEO on a business like that. It very much the emphasis and responsibilities are on us to make it happen for our customers.
Charles, I'm going to jump into a few of the questions. It was a great introduction, and thanks so much for being so open about some of the people you shared there. I want to talk about who perhaps you admire, who's had an impact on you as a leader. You've mentioned a few names from your past, but who has perhaps been a mentor to you or someone you've looked up to, or maybe there's several, and perhaps how have they helped guided you on your own journey?
So there's a couple actually. I mean, there have been several, and another really important attribute that I talk to our juniors about that I've tried to do is to actually listen. So many people. And it's a very common trait in life. Everyone likes talking about themselves. And I work very hard to make sure that actually I get everyone else talking about themselves, and you learn so much if you listen. And so it's a bit like interview technique where the candidate's meant to do 90% of the talking and you do 10%. So often you get into sell mode where the candidate is doing only the complete reverse, and that's totally wrong. The answer to your question, again, back to the listening. So first one is an interesting one, is one Chips Keswick. Chips Keswick was CEO of Hambros, the merchant banks where I grew up, with Schroders and Warburgs and Chips. I mean, his Christian name was Chippendale, and actually, yes, he was named Chippendale because of the bed that he was conceived in, believe it or not. And had a very rarefied atmosphere in terms of blue-blooded merchant banker, and everyone knows the Keswick family extremely wealthy. And he went through the public schools and rarefied atmosphere. But Chips was an interesting character. He was the only one in the bank that called me Charlie, and he used to get on the phone to me and he used to go, "Charlie, the computer's broke." And actually, we had hundreds of computers in the merchant bank. I was CEO, Treasury and Capital Markets at the time. But he had this lovely way whereby he could simplify everything, like that example, on the basis of I then had to work out which computer may have broken and get onto it, of really just getting to the issues that mattered and staying at the 50,000 feet level in relation to actually the perception. He had this uncanny nature of always getting the right topic and knowing where the weaknesses or the right question to ask. wasn't very good on the detail, and that had to come later as Barings crisis and directors on bank boards changed, and actually you need to know exactly what was going on in your bank. But what I loved about Chips was the style, the engagement, and the simplicity in terms of focus on the main issues. And he taught me a lot in relation to just interaction and personnel style. The second one was one Chuck Winograd moving to RBC, a hard-nosed investment banker who ran at RBC Capital Markets. High-paced, high-energy, very, very clever. And when I first started at RBC Capital Markets, essentially, I always remember he used to ask various questions, and he used to say to me, Charlie, you shouldn't say that you need to go and find an answer and come back. You should be able to answer all my questions straight off the bat. And even if you can't answer it, you should give me an opinion, right? 80-20, you should have a feel for the answer to that. So not only were you involved in the strategic conversations at Operating Committee, I need to know how much we were spending on paper clips or whatever the detail was. And very soon I realised I had to work immensely hard to actually be a master of the strategy, but actually really know the detail. And if I didn't have the right judgment to give a good enough 80-20 answer, that was brilliant grounding on the basis of. The other aspect he used to say to me was, Charlie, I should only have to ask you once. Unfortunately, my team actually have to take this and the rest of, you can ask a question, but if I have to tell you the second or third time, there must be a problem. That soon makes you listen and process and execute well. And so that was very, very good training in relation to trying to get things right first time.
Well, definitely good grounding. And
very
I'm sure
good grounding.
Served you well over the years as well.
Absolutely.
I want to talk a little bit, you just touched on engagement as well, and I'm curious to see, in today's world, how you as the leader of the business keep your employees engaged from the top. What are you doing in that area?
So important, and going back to my Hambros career and the rest, I think there was something like 7 or 8 different staff restaurants in the hierarchy of a merchant bank. If you were a bank official, you got to eat in the officials' dining room, and then you moved up to assistant director and director. I remember when I was made a director in the Hambros days, one of the youngest directors, of the first time I went into the director's dining room, and the whole protocols in relation to what you were allowed to do and the rest. The joy of ClearBank and today is that there's no hierarchy. We try and get rid of all hierarchy. It's not my title, etc., etc. And to the extent of I'm a massive team person. I try not to have any ego of any kind. It is all about the team. And to the extent of, I use the example in a room, on all of the issues, it's about the team getting together and working out a solution. And if the cleaner happens to be in the room and she's got the best idea, then that's what we do. It's not the fact I'm CEO or so-and-so's the CFO or so-and-so's this, that and the other, and therefore my view counts 3 times yours. The world we now live in terms of solutions for customers and 80-20, and I've seen it in my career so much in terms of takeovers and the rest, there's nothing that kills an organisation faster than the lack of a decision. And so I'd rather we made a decision and got on with it and learned and changed and go on to the next one, rather than have perfect information or analysis paralysis for 6 months to work out the right answer. No. And so the engagement is everyone's got a responsibility in relation to participating in that. Again, a former chairman of mine, we used to go around the world and he'd go up to a junior on a desk and ask them a question, and they'd sort of freeze if God was in front of them. And Tony used to say to me, everyone in this company should have an opinion. Doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong. They've got to have an opinion. They can't just come to work and do a 9 to 5 and go home. They must have an opinion. And that always stuck with me on the basis of that challenge and input. Doesn't matter whether it's wrong or right. It will just stimulate to get a better answer. And so client engagement, everyone is involved. In short, one of the things through popular demand really it was of actually our CPO, one challenge we had as an exco in considering how we can communicate better came to what we call the Thursday noon stand-up. And so to the whole bank, every noon on a Thursday, I or a member of EXCO stand up for 15 or 20 minutes and just talk about what's going on in the bank. And that's beamed to all of the bank, and people can ask questions. And it can be what happened at the board meeting, it could happen with a customer, it could be whether the netball team won the night before, it doesn't matter. But the whole team shares the success of the successes and failures. We've done that as a team, and it's been pretty hard. When it was 12, it's fine. Now it's 260, it gets harder.
And it's still going, yeah.
But it's still going, and we still do it every Thursday. And I believe, on the basis we move it all around and different, we have call-outs, whatever. But again, having worked in the US, I can't do the happy, clappy, and it's all wonderful. We still have the call-outs and exceptional performances, but it's more, I'd say, a more English style than perhaps the American style.
Well, I don't know if you've got a beautiful square down below. I don't know if you've had a chance to be outside with the team in the summer yet, but it's certainly a nice spot to be.
I think we're all working too hard, but at lunchtime, the buskers are very good, I have to say. It's a great vibe out there.
What do you think, Charles, what do you think is the biggest challenge facing business leaders right now?
It's a great question, and I've really struggled with the answer because I think there are so many different themes. My first theme was really visibility. And slightly old-fashioned, but the demand. You put in a Google search, the answer comes straight back at the click of a button. And whether it's our sort of prime minister or a CEO of a company or the man responsible, everyone now through social media and the rest has the right of where is he or she, right? And I don't want a spokesman, or I don't want this, that, or the other. Where's the person responsible? And it's like the Treasury Select Committee. On the basis we make a mess of it and have an outage of the rest, I will be in front of the Treasury Select Committee and accountability. And I think that's fantastic. So visibility on the basis of employees, of stakeholders, of regulators, the board, the media, a consumer. Something goes wrong, right? A company can't hide, and a CEO most definitely can't hide. And I think the demand, the thirst for either new joiners or a disgruntled employee or anybody of actually, where's the CEO? I want to talk to the CEO. And essentially being able to execute a business plan as well, satisfy that demand. But the other aspect of not just visibility, of course, is the age-old one, which is speed. Back at the Ambrose days, we can have long lunches, didn't have to work too hard, and we can make some quite decent money. Today it's full on. It's always full on. And to the extent there's an issue in social media land or a customer or whatever, you've got to be right on it. And so the pace at which you need to be able to respond and act and decide actually just gets faster and faster. And meeting consumers' demand or insatiable demand for speed and answers and explanation, you've got to be on your game, and you've got to be able to react fast, and you've got to be seen. You can't hide.
Just talking on that, if you I'm sure you've got some very good memories of some of those days of those previous days. If there was one thing you would miss about that environment, then what would it be?
Time.
Right. What do you mean?
It would be. I actually had a lot more. The speed of business was slightly slower, so you actually needed to. You did less. You could have more time to talk to people. So, I like to think that I delegate, pretty well. But even so, my diary and agenda in a fast-growing company of new customers or regulators or stakeholders or my team or issues or whatever it is, we seemingly had more time, right? And on the basis of something that was appearing in the press tomorrow, you had a bit of time to deal with it. Today in social media land, you don't have any time to deal with it. And seemingly, we as a team, it was easier to actually make money. If you were something that you were very good at, the margins were excessive. To the extent of going back to our treasury and capital markets business, we invented the first FRA. We were really innovative in the derivatives space. We actually able to launch that and we used to have £1 million revenue days on a regular basis. Well, disintermediation, all the margin compression, actually giving the consumer a better experience for a better price, all of that's gone. So the pace of change has actually gone there. So it was more enjoyable, but I have to say, if you're an adrenaline junkie or you like fast pace or trading rooms as I've grown up in, I'd be bored if it was there was nothing to do.
What's you've mentioned a few really great insights already, but what's the one best piece of business advice you've ever received?
Well, it's an odd one because really it's a sort of slightly intellectual accounting one, but actually it serves very well in relation. It's coming back to understanding. If you've got complexity and understanding something. And so in the financial services market, in particular in relation to derivatives, we can do it to any financial service product. And again, it was one Chuck Winograd at RBC that actually taught me this one, but it was the simplicity. And Chuck said to me, follow the cash. And so I've worked with a number of structured financiers, in fact the NatWest 3, who ended up in handcuffs going to, extradited to the US, coming up with the most complex SPV structures of all sorts of companies and spiders' webs in terms of the rest of it. Making sense of anything in relation to a highly complex derivative trade or a financial services product. Go back to where does the cash move through a product or a process. And if you follow that, that will give you a pretty good clue as to what might actually be going on and what's really going on in an end-to-end structure. And that's really interesting on the basis of, particularly if you get into options or complex products in relation to decompose a whole end-to-end process and have a look at the cash components in relation to that. And in fact, crypto is another good example on the basis of at what point do you actually, does cash convert, or does crypto then convert back into cash, and what happens and who's doing it when? So that's one piece of advice. The other one is to be highly skeptical. I've been fortunate, I've lived through the bearings crisis. I've talked about the NatWest 3 and essentially when the lifeboat was launched back in bearings in relation to surveying, buying bearings, but also obviously the last financial crisis. We were fortunate essentially that we owed money to Lehman's rather than the other way around when it actually happened. And that could be luck, but I think it was judgment. From the point of view of bubbles, and if something's too good, it normally is too good. So Enron was a really perfect example where if you go back to the team that were advising Enron and oil and gas, the accounting, it was unbelievable. No one can understand why Enron was growing so fast in terms of a company out of Houston of oil and gas. And of course, it wasn't true and it all went bang, right? Competition is so great. And again, as John Risley, I said before, in relation to investment, it's not about the new idea. It's all about timing, because everyone catches up with the idea in the end. I think, again, that's really interesting advice. So Enron was making a fortune and no one could understand why. And of course, it was all smoke and mirrors and SPVs and clever accountants and structurers that actually was generating the profit. It wasn't real.
How does a new employee, just swiftly changing subject slightly, how does a new employee understand the culture of ClearBank? How does that come about in the company when they first join?
Simplistic answer, and a bit of a cliche answer, but actually the truth. And it's similar to being a customer. I know, again, the analogy between an employee, because first off is talk to the existing employees, right? And if you're becoming a new customer, what do you want? You want a reference of a real live customer, not someone that's going to give you a fake reference, but actually tell you what it's really like. And we have a graduate program, we have a really healthy induction program, we're taking on software developers, we're taking on lawyers, compliance, risk people, with all the spectrum of all the disciplines of the bank. And our greatest advocates essentially are our existing employees. And I'm the type of individual where things are not always perfect, right? They just aren't. But I always want to strive for solutions to make it better. I can cope with the sort of the win session on the basis of this isn't good, but I'm a typical man in that I've then got to sort of say, right, well, what are we going to do about it? What can we change to do about it? So new employees, talking to our existing employees of what's good, bad, why did they join, what's their experience? Are they developing their CV? One of the things I talk about so much, or the talent that we've got, is throughout my whole career, it's been a give and take relationship. I'm prepared to work really hard as long as the organisation gives back. And if that relationship gets out of kilter, then there's going to be a problem. So while the employees are with us, are they growing? Are they developing? Are they learning? Is their CV getting? And if we're good enough, we'll keep them. But good people have options. And we want them to keep making the option to stay with us until they go somewhere else to develop their CV. So existing employees, we're really working hard on the right culture and reinforcing that without all the charts on the wall. Right, we've got to live it and breathe it and the rest, rather than actually having to check on the chart. I've worked in some banks where the values are on the wall the whole time. People got to live it and breathe it and be part of it. And obviously with our journey and the way we're trying to do it as a team, that's the most important thing, so everyone participates. So that builds engagement and excitement. And as I said, we celebrate all the successes and failures together. Trying to get away from the blame culture and fear, and everyone talks about it, but in banking, actually in SMR and everything else in the regulators, demand accountability that someone's responsible. I've tried so hard to actually build the culture so that it's solutions first, everyone works as a team, and then accountability afterwards, which is inevitable. But rather than actually all the finger pointing starts as soon as something goes wrong, that's a disaster.
What does diversity and inclusion mean to you?
Love it. And really I go back to Royal Bank of Canada. I talked about Hambros in relation to sort of blue-blooded merchant banks, and talk about like-minded sort of public school boys and hierarchies and all the privileges. It was a very rarefied atmosphere. And I actually didn't go to Eton or Harrow or the rest. So it was very interesting. But at RBC, an international bank, we had diversity champions. I was fortunate enough to look after Europe and Asia, all of the various different countries sort of outside of the US and Canada, looked after New York for a while. I love working in various different centres and different cultures, and realising that all the cliches of don't judge a book by its cover and all of those things. Once you get inside, and it doesn't matter, there's so much today in relation to body image and you've got to be this and conform to that and everything else. Learned so much, again as a cliche, that individuals, you get below what it might look like or sound like, there's always a lot there. And indeed, in the new employee forums, when we go around and I do a CEO lunch for all new joiners and everyone talks about it, I ask them to actually say something give an interesting fact about yourself. It never ceases to amaze me what some of the people actually come up with. Absolutely astonishing in relation to telling someone else that's got nothing to do with work, and then opens up a whole nother conversation. So really, really important. And of course, we always get back to the gender and banks and FTSE boards on the basis of not enough women.
Yeah.
It's not just about women. It's, in fact, we haven't got enough women in our IT software. We've got fantastic diversity in relation to sort of country and religion and all of that, but there's still not enough females going into IT software development.
Yeah.
Whereas in other parts of the bank, our whole almost law department, there's only 2 men. Absolutely critical, working so hard on reflecting your customer base in relation to your diversity. If you don't understand how your customers are actually thinking in relation to all the cultural and what they need, you cannot be a successful business. You just can't.
Is there a story that you could share from your childhood, something that perhaps influenced your work ethic late in later life? Is there anything you've got?
There isn't a moment, unfortunately, but there is. You may have picked up sort of, I've mentioned team a few times. I was never the pure A star, triple star sort of candidate. I always had to work at it in terms of the exam grades. What I really enjoyed in terms of childhood was the other activities. I was crazy about sport, I was crazy about doing other things, not just actually studying. Sport was really important to me, and I just loved team games in relation to whether it was hockey or rugby, or it didn't matter what. And even on the individual sports, so athletics, and I used to sort of sprint and do long jump and various others. What I actually really enjoyed was the 4x100 or 4x400 metre relays, on the basis of 4 of us actually winning. And I was fortunate enough to be captain of athletics, and we used to have a athletics 11 against the cricket 11, and actually occasionally beat them on the basis of actually doing that. What I loved, and my parents really sort of instilled in me, was you can be an individual sportsman and do it all individually, and it's all about you, and it is in terms of doing your best performance. The aspects of team winning, I've always found something very special, and that has always been very important to me on the basis of, okay, well, if I'm not the brightest, I think I know how to be a great team player and play in a team and contribute. And so often I've seen in my career, fantastically qualified individuals that essentially have got the most amazing academic qualifications, but can they operate in a team, right? It's so fundamental in today's workplace.
Charles, I just want to ask you one more question, if that's all right. And thanks so much for sharing so much already. If you had your time again and were just giving yourself, your 20-year-old self, one piece of advice, what would you go back and tell yourself?
Well, it's an interesting question because I've recently been approached on it's a charity mission that's going on, actually called One Golden Nugget. And it's an individual, a journalist, that got the idea of talking to business leaders in relation to give me a quote that actually would be useful to a next generation of something to do with your career and success. Mm-hmm. And essentially is building a book of all of those quotes. And actually, I don't know who I was referred to, but I had to refer them to another 3 business leaders that I respected and on the go. And actually, it's a great website that's actually building now. I happen to got it here actually, in some brilliant, and there are some great quotes. Mine's a little bit cliche on a theme that I've already talked about. My quote that's going forward in all of that is as follows: no matter how good or bad you are, be a team player. It's a cliche, and unfortunately I wasn't building to that either through the line of questioning, etc. Really, I'm repeating the point that I had before of, you can try and be the best at this, that, and the other, but to the extent of getting on with people and actually listening and contributing in a positive way, it's just so important. Everyone talks about that in an individual you can achieve X, but together in a collection of individuals you can achieve so much more, and I so believe that.
What do we have a website for this this project? Because I know it's a charity
so
project.
It's www.onegoldennugget.com.
Okay.
And as I said, it's fantastic, and that actually he was going to start publishing the book, but it keeps getting referred to business leaders all over the world. So I'm not sure when the project is actually going to start.
It's going to be a big book.
It's going to be a big book. But if there is some graduate or someone that's unemployed or underprivileged, that sort of cannot get out of their situation, and I'm a big fan of education as well, that could pick up that book or go and look at a website, and it actually triggered a positive thought in their mind to go on to be brave enough to then do something differently. Absolutely fantastic.
Charles, you've been fabulous this afternoon. Thank you for sharing so much. What's the best way, if our listeners want to find out more about ClearBank, where can I send them? Where can they go, or you good self?
The ClearBank website is the place it's at. So please go to that website. We've actually got inquiries and various other links and contacts there in relation certainly to a business perspective. And I'm fully on LinkedIn, love LinkedIn. And so very open, certainly send me a message on LinkedIn, very happy to either link up or respond to any messages or indeed any questions. And finally, you can of course email me at ClearBank, which is charles.mcmanus@clear.bank. So we've got a bank domain, so that's charles.mcmanus@clear.bank.
Thank you very much for your time.
No, thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Wish you every success with more interviews.
Thank you.
We really hope you enjoyed our podcast. If you're listening to this on iTunes, please take a moment to give us a review. 4 stars would be good, but 5 stars would be amazing.